All right, my name is Philip Hensley, P-H-I-L-I-P, Hensley, H-E-N-S-L-E-Y. I'm a trooper with the Sellersburg Post of the Indiana State Police.
How many people were involved in this?
A total of three. There were two vehicles. Basically, one was a passenger and a witness. So how this went down this afternoon, just after 2 o'clock, so we're talking about 2:01, we received a 911 call of a possible sideswipe crash collision around the 16-mile marker of I-65 in Clark County. The vehicles were not stopping. They essentially were in a road rage incident where both vehicles were speeding up, slowing down, not just pulling over and coming to a stop. So our 911 caller remained on the line, informed us that they had stopped on the ramp at the Henryville exit, which is the 19-mile marker, the northern part of Clark County. Pulled over, our dispatchers heard shots being fired through the 911 call. The shooter actually said, yes, I fired shots. Basically what had happened, both vehicles had stopped, the occupants got out of the vehicle, so the driver of a maroon Ford Bronco, the driver of a white Chrysler Town & Country, and the passenger of that minivan, all standing on the ramp of 65 northbound. They both drivers got out of the vehicles carrying handguns. During the altercation, believed there was a threat. We're still investigating the circumstances behind the shooting, but we believe the driver of the Ford fired upon the driver of the Chrysler minivan. Now, the passenger and the driver of the minivan both got in their vehicle, continued up the ramp, stopped at the Circle K in Henryville. The driver was tended to by EMS. He was transported to U of L Hospital for the gunshot wounds. The driver of the Ford remained at the scene, stayed on 911 until our troopers arrived, and then was detained at that point without incident.
Will he be charged with anything?
We're still working on that. We have interviews going on and probably will here through the course of the afternoon hours. Ideally, we'll know more and they can put out more a little bit later once we have that figured out.
And at the beginning, you said all of this could have been prevented.
Right. If you had a sideswipe collision, something certainly that none of us would either anticipate nor want to be a party of. It's frustrating to have a crash. If both drivers would have simply stopped on the shoulder, contacted us to come investigate the crash, we work the crash, we send you out with a crash report and you're done, none of this, absolutely none of this would have happened. So this is entirely preventable. The fact that you allow your emotions to overwhelm yourself beyond the circumstances of what you just went through, this is unnecessary. And this is why we end up with the circumstances that we do out here on the highways with these quote-unquote road rage incidents. It's all preventable. Simply put your emotions aside, handle the situation. It's unpleasant regardless. Certainly, nobody wants to be in a crash. Nobody wants to be frustrated out on the roadway. But to become interactive with another person to the extent that someone gets shot is simply unacceptable on Indiana's highways. And that's why you see our presence out here. That's why we are out here slowing motorists down, stopping people for traffic violations to eliminate those reckless and dangerous drivers that could potentially cause and create a road rage incident.
Now, both of them had firearms.
That's correct, yes.
How many road rage incidents have you had like this where people have either displayed a gun or fired shots?
We had one earlier this year in Clarksville. And I believe an individual lost his life in that circumstance. To have these type of incidents where we get reports that firearms were displayed, that, oh, he showed a gun, we show up, no, there wasn't necessarily a gun. For there to be two guns, confirm that they both were there, and one to be used, a little bit on the normal side of things, but still, it's a fact that it is there, it did happen, and now we're left here investigating with somebody hurt and somebody in custody.
The driver of the Bronco was the one who fired the shots, correct?
That's correct.
Did he feel like he was defending his life or that his life was in danger?
She. That is the aspect that our detectives are they're actually at this moment speaking with her and trying to put that together.
How many shots were fired?
4. 4 shots were fired by the driver of the Ford.
And all of them hit the car?
We're still trying to determine, it's going to be a matter of how many times the driver of the minivan was struck, and then can we account for the other rounds? Did they go into the vehicle? Did they go through the vehicle? We believe the answer to that may potentially be yes as well. So I'm wanting to make sure we account for all of the rounds that were fired. There weren't other people directly in line of the firing. So that's at least fortunate, because that's something else nobody considers. Well, you have this interaction. Are you checking your background, which is something we as law enforcement focus on if we're involved in a shooting? What's behind, if we're firing, what's behind that person or that object? You know, that may not necessarily have been accounted for in this case. So we want to make sure that all 4 rounds were accounted for, be it if they unfortunately struck the driver of the minivan, did they go into the van, where are they? So that's something we're looking at as well.
So did she shoot all 4 rounds, or did the other driver shoot back?
We do not believe that he fired any rounds, that all the rounds came from the driver of the Ford.
You say it was a side swipe. Now, was the side swipe part of the road rage incident, or is that what sparked the incident?
That's what sparked the incident, right? And from my being on scene initially, damage looked pretty minimal. So this was absolutely unnecessary.
Who hit who?
On a side swipe, it would kind of come down to saying, you know, getting the statements from both drivers. Without that, hard to say, or what the other circumstances. If one was pushed out of the lane into the other, we don't have that information just yet.
Were these both drivers from Indiana?
Interstate or on the ramp?
Interstate, roughly around the 16-mile marker. So the road rage incident, these individuals basically carrying on with each other, accelerating, slowing down, making gestures, went on for about 2 to 3 miles.
Were these both drivers from Indiana? Were they from
Yes,
Kentucky?
both from Indiana.
Now, Indiana's a open carry state. Do they, either
Yes.
one of them have a permit to carry?
Well, in Indiana, you wouldn't need the permit, right? We are a constitutional carry, open carry, so as long as you're not a convicted felon, you are able to possess a firearm and carry that on your person. Whether or not either individual was a convicted felon, that's still part of the investigation.
Any arrests been made?
Not yet, not yet. Like I said, we've actually got parties here in the post being interviewed right now, so wanting to try to put out as much as we can now, and then kind of fill in the details as far as the aftermath of it eventually later on.
It was just the 2 individuals, no other occupants of those cars?
Right, the third, when I say there were 3 people involved, that third person was a passenger in the minivan. She was not injured and is not being charged.
And the driver of the van, was it a man or a woman?
It was a man.
How long might this impact traffic on 65?
We're hoping to have that ramp back open possibly by 5 o'clock. And with it being 5 o'clock on a Friday, obviously traffic stacking up for several miles, we want to get that traffic out of there just because, you know, we're kind of focused on secondary crashes and things happening down the line. So the smoother that traffic can flow, ideally we have that cleared up in about an hour.